Greetings viewers, EricTheCarGuy here, back again with another Xbox repair video. Yeah, that's right. Some time ago I had done a Xbox repair video on the 3 red rings of death on the, I guess you could call it, first generation of Xbox 360. Well, now I'm back again with another Xbox type repair video. The Xbox that I'm going to use in this video is actually perfectly functioning at this time. The reason this whole thing came up is because my son had sent to me his Xbox Elite that had developed a disk read error, or it wouldn't read disks, or sometimes I believe you also get an open tray error. So if you find yourself with one of those error codes or situations, you may be able to use the information in this video to help you. Now, your results may vary, but mostly you can use this video as a way to show you how to disassemble the Xbox 360 Elite. So take this information with a grain of salt. I'm not going to claim to be an electronics expert, but I was successful in the repair of that Xbox. So let's get this one torn apart and hopefully put back together and working again. For starters, I suppose I'll show that this Xbox is working using this little video monitor that I have here. So as you can see, this Xbox will fire up and it is working. I hope it goes without saying that you need to disconnect the AV connection and also disconnect it from its power source before you get started. Here are the tools that I used to disassemble it last time. Pocket screwdriver, this is a T10 Torx bit, and also a box cutter or just a razor blade will do. And you may note that this Xbox shows signs that it's actually been opened up in the past, or at least attempted to be opened up in the past. The first time you go to open one of these up, it's going to be kind of difficult because, especially in this area, there will be some things that will break, but no worries, you should be able to get back together, no problem. Also, it bears mentioning that many of these are still under warranty, so I would not attempt this repair unless your Xbox was out of warranty. If it is still in warranty, send it off, have them fix it for free. Don't waste your time or your money. Anyway, this is the bottom of the Xbox where the hard drive would normally be located. The Xbox that I have here does not have a hard drive in it, but you can just pull this little tab back to gain access to the hard drive. Now, this piece of plastic was already loose anyway, but you want to pry up and get this grill off, and it's just clipped in with these clips here, and you should be able to pry up on it, and it should come out fairly easily. Next up on the list is you want to get this inner piece of plastic off. And this is where you're going to break things. Now it's not huge, I'll show you exactly what you're breaking here in a minute, but you want to pry up on this center plastic piece here, all the way around. And you can start at the edges or what have you, but you'll notice on this side over here, it should be hooked in to the outer bezel. So when you pry up on the opposite side, because what you're going to do is you're just going to sort of work this out of here. And this is where you'll notice some difficulty. I'm just using a pocket screwdriver to do this with. And this one actually is coming out a little bit different than the last one of these that I did. Of course, now that you're all watching. Okay, you may have noticed during the process of me doing this that this outer bezel was coming up. Normally it wouldn't do this, especially if you were doing this for the first time, but you would get a lot of cracking and popping here. And the reason for that is these little pieces of plastic here are actually sort of melted down into that outer bezel. So what you're breaking off are these little, that look like little black donuts. So now we need to get this outer bezel piece off of here. And in order to do that, I'm going to give you a close-up. All right, the reason mine comes up so easily is because these clips right here have been broken off. I have a feeling they pried this whole piece up like that, but you can see where it's supposed to clip in underneath here. So when you go to do this, what I did was I took that pocket screwdriver, slipped it in behind here, and pried out this way. And I just sort of started at the edges, unclipping it, and then worked my way around until I was able to remove this piece entirely. There we go. You can see once you unclip them what is actually clipped in there. And then once you've done that, you'll be able to get this whole bezel piece off of the outside here. Something that I just practice is I try to keep all parts organized as I'm taking something apart. It makes reassembly that much easier. Nothing is more frustrating than when you go to put something back together and you can't find the parts. Now that we've got this side done, let's flip it over and do the same thing to the other side. This is just one continuous piece here on this side. But you can just reach in, just sort of pry up on the edges and keep working your way around. And I can't stress enough how you do this for the first time, and it's going to be a little difficult and it's going to sound like it's going to break, but just keep at it, be patient, and you should be okay. Same thing on this side. Like I said, I'm not sure if you could reach down in here and perhaps knock those loose. Maybe you can. And if you can, wow, that would be much better than breaking things. In fact, I'm going to say that this might be the way to go. Yeah. If you do it this way, you save yourself from breaking this inner piece here. Yeah, I like this a lot better. I like not breaking things if I can help it. Yeah, that's a much better way of doing this. So, if you're going to remove these in the future, instead of breaking this center piece of plastic out and breaking all these little tabs that I just showed you off right here, instead of breaking all of those off, just reach down in through these slots and you can see where they are. Reach down in through these slots with a screwdriver and push back like this in each one of these, and this will save you from breaking this inner piece. So I just learned something today myself. So when you go to take the other side apart, do the exact same thing. Now before I go further, I'm going to take this card here out, and there's a T10 located down here. Just unscrew that. Remove the screw. And then you can just pull up on this card and it should come right out. Sort of a USB type connection there. All right, now is where it gets maybe a little scary. I'm going to pull this front face piece off here. And you can see where it's clipped in. And I'm going to reach in here, and just like I did on those sides, and then there's going to be on the opposite side the same thing. I'm going to try to reach in and pry back on these parts. And then as I do, I'm going to push forward. Now I'm going to ever so slowly inch my way down. Now before you get all crazy pulling this whole front piece off, I want you to be careful. There's a ribbon cable right around here on the front. So when you go to pull this off, don't pull hard, because it's only going to come so far before it damages that ribbon cable. And you don't want to damage that ribbon cable because it's your eject button and your power button. So you don't want to do that. So be very careful as you're doing this and work your way down from one side to the next. Okay, remember, like I said, just sort of reach down in here with a screwdriver and pry up on the plastic clips that are holding it in, and just sort of keep doing that all the way down. This is why that piece was damaged there, and I'm just sort of pushing out like this at the same time. I'm coming in here to try and pry these loose. I'm going to do it on both sides. And I'm just sticking the screwdriver in and twisting it. And whenever you can reach in like this and knock those loose, it's a good thing. All right, remember what I said now. Don't just yank this off of here. There's a ribbon cable we have to look after. See right here? That's what we want to make sure that we don't break. I'm going to spin it around so you can see it better. If I'm honest, using something plastic here would be a lot better. That way I don't run the risk of damaging something when I do that. So you see how I pulled up on this side first? Because it's sort of looped in. Now when I push this back, what should happen is that cable should pull right out of there. All right, now that I've got that loose, see? That connects your power button and your eject button up in here. That's why I want to be careful of them. The other thing I'm going to do is this piece here may come off on you. If it does, don't worry, there's 2 pins on it. There's 2 pins that locate inside the circuit board here and here. Also, there's a little arrow there that you can probably see that points towards the top of the Xbox. So when you install it with the arrow facing up and try to get those little pins down inside those little holes on the circuit board. All right, now as I said, this Xbox has been apart in the past, and you can tell by how loose it is. But the only thing holding this top piece, or actually it's going to be the bottom, the only thing holding this bottom on now is the clips in the back here. And those are right here, and you can pry those out in the same way as you pried everything else apart up to this point. It's coming apart quite easily. Your results may vary. Also note this little sticker here. Once you break the seal on that sticker, you pretty much voided your warranty. So, you know, before you commit to this, make sure that you're ready for that and prepared for no warranty. This is pretty much going to be your Xbox. Now that we've got that cover off, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe 5, should be 5. But the 5th is underneath this sticker. Yep, sure is. So also, once again, once you start removing stickers, they're going to know that you had it apart. So remove these 5 screws. They're all T10s. They're all the same length. So that same T10 Torx bit you used before, you can use it again here. And as I said, these are all the same length. I think this one's either broken or stripped. I don't think the last person that took this apart did it with much care. But I'm not going to buy a new Xbox and take it apart for you. I'm going to buy a used Xbox. It's just how I roll. This one here was just spinning, this little plastic thing down here. But now that all that stuff's removed, you should be able to take this cover right off. There we go. It may hang up on these edges here, so be aware of that. It may hang up on these as you're trying to remove it. But now we have a look at the insides of the Xbox. It's a very different design than the older Xboxes. It has a much larger fan, much larger cooling element over the processors, and that's going to equate to hopefully a longer lifespan. I haven't heard of red rings of death on these, but that's not to say it can't happen. But this was the problem with the disk read error. And once you've got all those screws and everything out, you should be able to just lift out the disk drive. Before you do, you're going to have to unplug 2 electrical connections here, and carefully do this. Just sort of wiggle them a little bit and pull them out. And it should come free, and you've got your laser disc drive out. All right, this is as far as I got with the inside of the Xbox itself. Obviously, if you have other problems with it, I don't know if this is one of those situations where if you get a red ring, you can heat it up and reflow the solder joints on the motherboard. That's basically what the problem was on the old Xbox. But I didn't have to mess with any of this. I just got to this point. Now, you have a choice. You can either just replace this whole thing as a unit, should you have a problem with it, like the discrete error, and then poof, you're done. Or you can go these extra steps that I'm showing you now, and hopefully you won't have any issues. I forgot to mention one tool. You're going to need a smaller Phillips head screwdriver to remove these Phillips head screws. But before we go there, I want to do two things. This is like a rubber damper on the back here that you need to remove. And this helps prevent noise. If this wasn't here, or if you forget to put this back on, and you notice you got like a super noisy disk drive, well, this is why. And unfortunately, this one broke, because normally they just go all the way around. And but it looks like the rubber deteriorated there, probably from heat. That's the main enemy of electronics, is heat. So before we go to open up the disk drive, we have to do this, and this is what our razor blade is for, or in my case, a box cutter. You'll notice a dust seal around the outside of this tray here. So in order to deal with that, I take a razor blade and slip it underneath. It's held on by adhesive. And try to slip the blade underneath the adhesive so that you can peel that off of there before you go to open this up. It shouldn't rip like that. If you can, try to get it all off in one piece, because the whole point is to keep dust out of this drive, because you get dust in here and maybe you get a little bit on the laser. That's what can cause this problem. Or perhaps the laser's bad. It's hard to say. It's hard to say without, good electronic testing equipment. To go the rest of the way, you remove the 4 Phillips head screws. Remember, at this point, you've voided your warranty. Make sure you're prepared to buy yourself a new Xbox if this doesn't work out. But I have every confidence you're going to do a good job, and it's going to work for you. All right, now that we've gotten things this far, it's time to separate the two halves. And this is kind of interesting here. So you want to pull up when you pull up on this part, slide it back. That's what I was trying to show you, but the bottom came off. And you'll see why here in a second. That's because these grooves right here lock in, so that when you go to pull it apart, that's what happens. And we're now looking at the heart and soul of our disk drive. And there's our laser. We don't want to touch it with our fingers. If you touch it with your fingers, you could ruin it. So in order to clean it, get a can of like spray air and spray around it so that you can get some of the dust away. I wouldn't touch it with your fingers. I've also heard people talk about using a Q-tip with a little bit of alcohol. I'm just going to say that that makes me very, very nervous. When you're talking about a laser and the lens right there, it really has to have a nice clear shot at what it's trying to read. If there's any kind of obstructions, like any smearing on the lens or anything like that, I don't believe it's going to be able to read properly. So just be mindful of that. Now, if you go through all this trouble and you clean the laser off and you put it all back together and this still doesn't work, you have one of two options. You can either replace this whole unit, or you can replace just this laser itself. Now, if there's something wrong with the motors that locate this, then you're going to have to replace this whole unit. I wouldn't bother replacing just those things, or trying to replace the drive mechanism for it. I would just replace the entire thing. Okay, well, we've come this far, so I might as well show you how to take the laser out should you need to replace the laser. Now, note, right up here, there's like a little tab. Sort of grab it with a screwdriver and push it in this direction. And that will get the tray started so you can pull it the rest of the way out and you can gain access to everything you need to disconnect the laser. So in order to do that, you can just disconnect this clip here. This ribbon cable, I should call it, actually. So you can disconnect it like that. You just pull that plastic back like I just showed. Then you're going to need another smaller Phillips head screwdriver to get this little plastic piece off here. Very careful with this screw. Sorry, I'm making it so you can't see. Very careful with that screw. When you take this off of here, sort of move it to the side. Next, I want to remove this other retaining clip up here. And to do that, I'm going to remove this screw, which is a much larger Phillips head screw. I want to get my bigger Phillips screwdriver out here. I think this guy's got Loctite on him. So you're going to have to make sure that you have the correct size screwdriver, because if not, it's going to want to strip out, and I actually don't. So I'm going to go grab the correct screwdriver. I'll be right back. I just realized something. This plastic piece here can just pull right out. It just hooks in right there. Now I'm going to try again. I have a more correctly sized screwdriver for this. Yeah, there we go. You can see that that retaining clip came off with that. Yeah, might need to move it back a little bit. Might need to move it back a lot. So this way it'll clear. See how I had to move it back like that so it would clear here? So I could slide it up off of that bar. In fact, you can just pull that out of back here a little bit. There you go. And you can just pull it out as an assembly like that. So what I have in my hand here, you can just slide that out, is the laser itself, and this is what you would replace if it turned out that the laser was the issue. So, and with this one you can see actually little bits of debris. Maybe you can see that there. But the problem, I just took some canned air, and on the one that I fixed, I just took some canned air and sprayed around the outside of it, stuck it back in, fired it up, and the closed tray error was gone after that. All right, let's pretend this is a new laser, and we're gonna install it. Once again, don't touch that lens. I'm gonna put that rod back through. What I'm doing is I'm just sort of fishing it into that area, because you want it to hook in over on the opposite side. Then over on this side, I'm going to pull up on this spring clip here so that the rod can slide back underneath. There's like a little screw there. It's making that somewhat difficult. There we go. Just going to keep sliding it in until it's up here and makes contact. Make sure it can move back and forth, which it can. If you remember, I got that little retaining clip that holds it in place. So I'm going to push it over, put in my clip, like so. Grab my screw. It wasn't this one. It was actually the thicker, heavier screw was the one that held that in. I should have magnetized this screwdriver, but I'm holding it like this. Just going to drive it home. Make sure it goes down in there correctly. You'll know if you encounter resistance, then stop. Because I can't stress enough how you don't want to cross thread this. And you don't need to tighten it down so much that it's never going to move again. Okay. Come back in with our other retaining clip here. I'm going to slide it up to where it can. I'm just going to put it on like this. There we go. There, it'll snap into place. Get our other smaller screw. Same deal here, you're screwing down into plastic, so just ever so gently. Once it gets tight, leave it alone. Stop. Now we need to reinstall that ribbon cable. We'll pull back on the retainer. Slide it into place. Make sure that's... Seems like every time I get it seated down in there and I'm about to lock it down is when it pops back out. Be patient. Stuff when you're working with little bitty things like this, you need to be patient. Give it time, don't rush it. Okay. It's my hope that locks it in. There we go. It appears connected now. Tug on it a little bit. Okay. I'm happy with that. Now, I'm going to push the tray back in, slide it back over. Remember what we did? It should start to move back over in that direction. There we go. I'm just gonna manually move this to make sure that it moves okay. Start it all the way up here at the beginning. Take a breath. You made it this far. Good for you. Note these little white things here on the inside of the tray there. Those are actually heat sinks for these processors and things. If they come off like this, leave them where they are and try to make sure that they end up in the same place. I'm gonna put the bottom on first. And then remember how our top went on. It's got those slots in there that need to slide on through there. See, I'm hung up over here. There we go. Should slide on easy. All right, that just sort of slid home. Now put the bottom on.
I like to get all my screws started before I start running them down. I say this a lot, mainly because it helps keeping things from getting into a bind. And I also need to stress that you're dealing with electronics here, so when you tighten things down, tighten them down snug, but don't start cranking on them until you hear things crack and break. Two things you should try very hard not to forget. One is this little dust cover here. Now, I suppose you could have cut it instead of peeled it off like I did. Just sort of cut it at these corners here so you could get this apart. That might have been easier than trying to place this back on here like this again. I'm gonna leave that up to you. It is your Xbox after all. But the takeaway here is to try and make it so you're not putting the tray into a bind. I'm hoping that adhesion reseals good enough. Seems to be relatively in the same space. We'll try opening and closing it once we get it reinstalled. But here's the thing, I'll admit that I forgot last time, was to put this little rubber piece back on, because like I said, if you don't, it's likely you're gonna wind up with some noise. The top has the shorter ones. Seems that's going to stay in place for me, and I'm grateful for that. Now I'm going to install it back inside. Restore my electrical connections. I don't want to pull on these wires too much. And then that just rests back into place. Let's get that cover back on. Now during the little break there, I had just sort of hit the inside of this with some compressed air. I don't want you doing that. That's kind of why I didn't show it, because compressed air has moisture in it. You don't really want to spray moisture on electronics. You're better off with that canned spray air stuff, because that's kind of what that stuff is meant for. Fan goes over the fan. And you can see where this one was broken. As you put this on, make sure the metal goes over the outside of this. Now we can flip it over so we can install our fasteners, which go here, here. Here is this one, but that one was broken, remember? You got here, and finally here on this corner. Got my T10 Torx. I think this one got broken because it was run down too tight. These screws go into plastic, so keep that in mind. In other words, no over torquing. All right, now what we're doing is, you see these clips here and here. They should all slide together in a perfect world. Now, before I forget, remember the arrow and remember the little holes that it needs to go into. Okay. If it's in there, you should feel a little bit of slop. If it's really tight, feels like it's bound up, make sure that those pegs went down into those holes, because if they didn't, it's going to be a problem. Let's redo our delicate ribbon cable. Remember, it is delicate. When I install it, I'm going to pull up on this part like this, insert it, and then hook this over. Make sure this is pulled back, that locking mechanism. See that? I got it pulled through. Now I'm going to loop it around. Once it's looped around, I'm going to push it together. And now it's all back together and happy. You install these, make sure that they fit down into the slots. There. And also underneath. Starting to look like an Xbox, huh? I'm just going to do one more thing and then I'm going to test it. And the reason being is, you got it half apart. So actually I could have tested it with a controller. I could have just plugged the controller in, it would turn on with a controller. But you've got to have this in here in order for it to fire up. It's that T10 again. Oh, there we go. Now let's plug it in and see if it still works. All right, now it's moment of truth. Got my monitor on. See what happens. Fires up, that's a good sign. I have a disc here, let's see if it reads. It is reading. And the game comes up. Well, I suppose before we can truly call this done, we should finish putting it back together. But as I said, test it before you get it all put back together. That way, if you have a problem, you can always go back and deal with it. This goes on. See, there's two clips back here that need to go back towards this side. So this goes on like this. You'll notice assembly is a lot easier than disassembly. Make sure you line up your tabs here. I've got a single one over here. I've got two that go in the back here. we go. Flip it over. If I had a hard drive, I'd be installing it now. Well, actually, I would put this in first. So, there we go. And then remember how this had these slots here? Well, I do believe, yeah, it goes in like this. I do believe the way that fits in, you'll see these little pieces that stick up here in these holes here. Stick that in like that. Make sure that goes through. Then this grill. And install my hard drive. And this just sort of clips in like this. And voila, it's all back together. Well, I hope that bit of information was useful to you. So if you find yourself in a situation where you need to disassemble your Xbox Elite for whatever reason, I'm hoping the information in this video is going to help you get it done. As I said, if you experience that open tray error or a disk will not read, you have several different options. One, you can replace the entire disk drive assembly, or you can go in and replace just the laser assembly. I'm going to look around and see if I can find a link to where you can purchase one of those lasers should you find yourself in that position. This information is information. I claim no liability whatsoever for the results that you get should you decide to pursue this. I've done the best I can to try and keep you out of trouble in the process of making this video. Should you have questions about this, I'm not going to claim to be an electronics expert or an Xbox expert. Basically, I make videos about auto repair. However, when I go out on the internet and I see videos about, taking these Xboxes apart, I have the inclination to where I think maybe I can make one that might be a little bit better. So I made this video for you here today, and I hope it was clear and easy for you to understand. But if you have questions, I'm going to post the link in the description to a forum discussion over at EricTheCarGuy.com about this video where you can ask your questions. But once again, I can't stress enough how I may or may not be able to answer those questions for you. If you have automotive questions, head over to EricTheCarGuy.com and type in a couple of keywords into the search function up at the top of the page. You very well maybe get an answer just by doing that. If that's not the case, feel free to sign up for our forum. It's absolutely free. Just be sure to respond to the confirmation email that you should get. If you don't get that, check your spam folder. It might be in there. Because if you don't click that activation link, your account's not going to be active. If you want to connect with me socially, you can find me on Google+, Facebook, and Twitter. And I close each of my videos with, be safe, have fun, and stay dirty. Happy gaming!